The world spun, a kaleidoscope of colors and screams, before everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't myself anymore. I was Elias, a pregnant omega in a stranger's body, staring at a towering man with eyes like winter storms. His name was Caleb, my husband, and he didn't remember me, or rather, he didn't remember anything but me. I woke up in a hospital bed in Syracuse, New York, the sterile scent of antiseptic burning my nose. My hands instinctively went to my belly, round and heavy, a sensation so foreign it sent my heart racing. I wasn't just Elias. I was Elias Harper, an omega in a world where alphas and omegas were as real as the crisp autumn air outside. My memory as me real ones, from a life in a bustling city, a desk job, and a name I could no longer recall clashed with Elias's. A jumble of love, betrayal, and a marriage built on a lie. I transmigrated into a novel I vaguely remembered reading, a melodramatic tale of an omega who tricked a cold alpha into marriage. That omega was me now, and the alpha, Caleb Wolf, the man who stood at my bedside, his jaw tight, his gaze locked on me like I was the only anchor in his storm-tossed world. Caleb's amnesia was a cruel twist. The car accident that landed us here had stolen his memories as childhood, his ambitions, his empire as a tech mogul in Syracuse's booming startup scene. Everything except me. Elias, he'd whispered when I woke, his voice raw, like my name was the only word that mattered. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The real Elias had manipulated Caleb into marriage, leveraging his omega pheromones and a fake pregnancy scare to secure a bond with the untouchable alpha. But the pregnancy wasn't fake anymore. I could feel the life inside me, real and undeniable. And Caleb, the man who'd once seen through Elias's schemes, now looked at me like I was his salvation. The hospital room was too quiet, save for the beep of monitors. Caleb sat beside me, his broad shoulders hunched, his tailored suit wrinkled from hours of waiting. "You're awake," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. I was scared. The admission seemed to cost him, an alpha whose reputation for ruthlessness preceded him. I swallowed, my throat dry. "I'm okay," I lied, my mind racing to piece together Elias's life. The novel's plot was hazy, but I knew Elias wasn't a saint. He'd been desperate, an omega from a rough background who saw Caleb as his ticket out. The marriage was a gamble, one that backfired when Caleb's icy demeanor never thawed until now. "Tell me about us," Caleb said, his blue eyes searching mine. My stomach twisted. What could I say? That Elias had seduced him at a gala, playing the damsel to Caleb's reluctant hero. That their marriage was a contract, not love. I couldn't. Not when he looked at me like that, like I was the only thing keeping him from drowning. "We love each other," I said, the words tasting like ash. His hand found mine, warm and steady, and for a moment, I wanted to believe it. Discharged from the hospital, we returned to Caleb's sprawling estate in the Syracuse suburbs, a modern mansion of glass and steel that felt as cold as its owner once was. The staff whispered behind my back Elias wasn't well liked. They saw me as the gold-digging omega who'd ensnared their alpha. I couldn't blame them. Elias's memories flooded me, late-night arguments, Caleb's distant silences, the way he'd looked at Elias with suspicion. But now, Caleb was different. He hovered, bringing me tea, adjusting blankets, his every action laced with a tenderness that made my chest ache. "You need to rest," he said one evening, kneeling beside the couch where I lay. "For the baby." His hand hesitated, then rested on my belly, and I froze, caught between guilt and a warmth I didn't deserve. The truth gnawed at me. I wasn't Elias. Not really. But I was trapped in his life, his body, his consequences, The baby was real, but the marriage was built on deception. Caleb's amnesia gave me a clean slate, but it was a fragile one. His sister, Mara, a sharp-tongued beta with no love for Elias, watched me like a hawk. "You're different," she said one afternoon, cornering me in the kitchen. Elias was never this soft. Her eyes narrowed, and I wondered if she suspected I wasn't him. "Caleb's not himself either," she added. "But he's happy. Don't ruin that." Her warning hung heavy, a reminder that this happiness was borrowed. As weeks passed, I tried to be the Elias Caleb needed. I cooked breakfast, laughed at his dry humor, and let him pull me close at night, his warmth a shield against the autumn chill. But the novel's plot loomed. In the story, Caleb regained his memories and confronted Elias, his rage shattering their fragile bond. I didn't know if that ending was inevitable, but I couldn't shake the fear that Caleb's love was for a man who didn't exist. Yet, every time he smiled, every time he whispered my name, I felt myself falling for the man who'd forgotten everything but me. One night, under a sky heavy with stars, Caleb took my hand and led me to the estate's garden. The air smelled of damp earth and fading roses. "I don't know who I was before," he said, his voice rough. "But I know I want this you. Us. The baby." He pulled me close, his lips brushing my forehead, and my heart broke. I wasn't his Elias, but I wanted to be. I wanted this life, this love, even if it was built on a lie. "I love you," I whispered, and for the first time, it felt true. But as his arms tightened around me, a shadow moved in the distance. Mara, watching, her expression unreadable. The past was closing in, and I wasn't ready. The days grew shorter, the Syracuse autumn painting the world in fiery hues. But the warmth of Caleb's affection couldn't quiet the storm brewing inside me. Every touch, every glance, felt like a theft of love meant for someone I wasn't. Yet, I clung to it, because the alternative was losing him, and I wasn't sure I could bear that. Caleb's amnesia had rewritten him. The cold alpha from Elias's memories, the one who'd signed their marriage contract with a scowl, was gone. In his place was a man who woke early to make me oatmeal, who read baby books with a furrowed brow, who traced circles on my hand when we watched old movies. "You're glowing," he said one morning, his eyes soft as he watched me struggle with a too-tight sweater. I laughed, embarrassed, but his sincerity made my chest tighten. I was falling deeper, and it terrified me. What would happen when he remembered the truth that Elias had tricked him, that our marriage was a calculated move? The estate was a gilded cage. The staff's whispers followed me, their loyalty to Caleb unwavering. Mara was the worst. She'd taken to visiting daily, her questions sharp as knives. "How's the baby?" she'd ask, her tone implying she doubted its existence. I wanted to scream that it was real, that I felt every kick, every flutter, but I couldn't. Elias's past hung over me like a guillotine. One evening, she cornered me in the library, a room of dark wood and leather-bound books. "Caleb's too trusting now," she said, her voice low. "He wasn't before." "You know why?" I froze, clutching a book I'd been pretending to read. "I'm not who you think," I said, but the words sounded hollow. She smirked. "We'll see." I needed answers, not just about Elias, but about this world. The novel's details were fuzzy, but I remembered enough to know danger lurked. Caleb's amnesia wasn't permanent in the story. His memories would return, and with them, his anger. I started digging, sneaking into his office late at night, rifling through files. I found contracts, emails, evidence of Elias's ski mesa trail of lies that led to our wedding day. There was a photo, too, tucked in a drawer, Caleb and Elias at a gala. Elias's smile calculated. Caleb's eyes distant. I stared at it, my stomach churning. That wasn't us now, but it could be again. Caleb caught me one night, his shadow filling the doorway. What are you doing? His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. I shoved the photo back, my heart pounding. Just looking for something. He stepped closer, his gaze flickering to my belly. You're scared, he said, not a question. Of me? I shook my head, but the lie stuck in my throat. I just want to know you, I said, half true. He knelt before me, his hands framing my face. You know me, he whispered, and kissed me, slow and deep, until I forgot the photo, the lies, everything but him. But the past wouldn't stay buried. A letter arrived, addressed to Caleb, from a lawyer in Rochester. It mentioned a prior agreement and dissolution options. My blood ran cold. Elias had signed a prenup, one that allowed Caleb to walk away if the marriage was proven fraudulent. I hid the letter, but the guilt ate at me. I couldn't keep this up forever. Caleb deserved the truth, but every time I tried to tell him, his smile stopped me. We're a family, he'd say, his hand on my belly, and I'd choke on the words. One afternoon, we drove to Skaneateles Lake, the water shimmering under a gray sky. Caleb spread a blanket, and we sat, sharing apple cider from a thermos. I want to be better, he said suddenly, his voice rough. For you. For the baby. I looked at him, his profile sharp against the lake, and felt a surge of love so fierce it hurt. You're enough, I said, meaning it. But as we packed up, a man approached, a former colleague of Caleb's, his face grim. You don't remember me, he said to Caleb, then glanced at me. But I remember him. His tone dripped with disdain, and I knew he'd known the old Elias. Caleb's hand tightened on mine, protective, but the man's words lingered, a crack in our fragile peace. That night, I couldn't sleep. The baby kicked, a reminder of the life tying me to this world. I slipped out of bed, leaving Caleb's warmth, and sat in the nursery. We'd started painting a soft green. Caleb's choice. I wanted this life, but it wasn't mine to keep. Mara's warnings, the lawyer's letter, the colleague's sneer, they were pieces of a puzzle coming together. Caleb's memories were stirring. I could see it in the way he'd pause, frowning, as if grasping at something just out of reach. When he remembered, would he hate me? Or worse, would he love me still, only to realize I wasn't the Elias he thought? I had to act. I started researching, using Caleb's laptop to scour old emails, social media, anything that could fill in the blanks. I found a blog post from Elias, written before the marriage, full of desperation and cunning. He'd planned everything, down to the gala where he'd accidentally spilled wine on Caleb's suit, sparking their first conversation. It was cold, calculated, nothing like the warmth I felt now. But there was something else, a mention of a doctor, someone Elias had paid to fake a pregnancy test. My hand went to my belly, real and warm. Whatever Elias had started, the baby was no lie. But would Caleb believe that? As I closed the laptop, headlights swept across the window. Mara's car. She stormed in, her face pale. We need to talk, she said, her eyes locked on mine. Now. Mara's voice cut through the silence of the mansion like a blade. You're not Elias, she said, standing in the dimly lit hallway, her arms crossed. My heart stopped, the weight of her words pinning me to the spot. I opened my mouth, but no sound came. How could she know? Was it my hesitation, my softness, the way I looked at Caleb? I don't know what you're talking about, I managed, but my voice shook. Mara stepped closer, her eyes glinting with something between suspicion and pity. Elias was a snake, she said. Cunning. Selfish. You're not. But you're hiding something, and I want to know what. I clutched the edge of the table, my mind racing. Tell her I'd transmigrated. She'd think I was insane. Tell her about Elias's schemes. That would destroy Caleb. I'm just trying to protect him, I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. She studied me, then nodded, but her expression said this wasn't over. The next morning, Caleb noticed my tension. What's wrong? He asked, his hand brushing mine over breakfast. I wanted to tell him everything about Elias, the lies, the baby that was real despite it all. But his eyes, so full of trust, stopped me. Just tired, I lied, and he kissed my temple, oblivious to the storm inside me. We spent the day planning for the baby, picking out cribs online, his laughter easing my fear for a moment. But Mara's words haunted me. She was right, I wasn't Elias, but I was living his lie, and it was unraveling. I started noticing changes in Caleb. He'd stare into space, his brow furrowed, as if chasing a memory. Once, he froze mid-sentence, his hand tightening on a coffee mug. I remembered something, he said, his voice distant. A building, glass and steel. My office. My stomach dropped. His memories were creeping back, and with them, the truth. I distracted him with a kiss, but it felt like stalling the inevitable. Desperate for answers, I contacted the doctor Elias had mentioned in his blog. Dr. Patel, a discreet physician in Syracuse, agreed to meet me at a cafe downtown. I told Caleb updates run out for errands, hating the lie. Dr. Patel was a wiry man with kind eyes, but his words were a punch to the gut. Elias paid me to falsify a test, he admitted, glancing around nervously. But when I examined him later, he was actually pregnant. I don't know how. I gripped my coffee, my mind reeling. The baby was real, but the lie that started it wasn't. Did you tell Caleb? I asked. He shook his head. Elias swore me to secrecy. I left the cafe, my heart heavy with relief and dread. The baby tied me to Caleb, but the truth could tear us apart. Back at the estate, Caleb was waiting, his expression unreadable. Where were you? He asked, not accusing, but curious. I panicked, blurting, just shopping. He nodded, but his eyes lingered, and I wondered if he sensed my guilt. That night, he pulled me close, his breath warm against my neck. I don't care about before, he murmured. Just you. Just now. I clung to him, tears stinging my eyes. I wanted to believe we could outrun the past, but Mara's footsteps echoed in my mind. The next blow came at a charity gala, a glittering event in downtown Syracuse. Caleb insisted we go, saying it might jog his memory. I wore a tailored suit that hid my belly, but I felt exposed, every glance from the elite crowded judgment. A woman approached, her smile sharp. Lydia, Caleb's ex-business partner. Elias, she purred, her tone venomous. Still playing the devoted spouse. Caleb's arm tightened around me, protective, but Lydia's words cut deep. He'll remember, she whispered as she passed, and my blood ran cold. She knew about Elias's schemes. How many others did? On the drive home, Caleb was quiet, his hands tight on the wheel. Did I love you before? He asked suddenly, his voice raw. The question caught me off guard. You cared, I said, hating the half-truth. He glanced at me, his eyes searching. I feel it now, he said, and my heart ached. I wanted to confess, To tell him I wasn't Elias, that I'd fallen for him despite the lie. But before I could, he pulled over, his hands trembling. I remembered something, he said, his voice breaking. You, at a gala. You spilled wine on me. You laughed. I froze. That was Elias's move, the start of his plan. Was that real? Caleb asked, and I couldn't answer. The next day, Mara confronted me again, this time with Evidencia USB drive with emails between Elias and a friend, detailing the marriage scheme. Caleb needs to know, she said, her voice hard. He's my brother. I begged her to wait, to let me tell him, but she shook her head. You have until tomorrow. I nodded, my throat tight. That night, I sat in the nursery, the green walls mocking my hope. I had to tell Caleb. But how? I wasn't just protecting myself, I was protecting the life we'd built, the love I felt, the baby who deserved a family. As I stood, a sharp pain shot through my belly, and I gasped, clutching the crib. The room spun, and I sank to the floor, fear gripping me. Caleb. I called, my voice weak. He was there in seconds, his face pale as he scooped me up. Hold on, he whispered, his voice steady despite the panic in his eyes. As he carried me to the car, I realized I couldn't lose him, not now, not ever. But the truth was coming, and I didn't know if our love could survive it. The hospital lights were too bright, the beeping monitors too loud. Caleb held my hand, his face etched with worry as the doctor checked my vitals. Stress, she said, her tone gentle but firm. You need rest, Elias. For the baby. I nodded, guilt twisting my gut. Stress caused by lies, by Mara's ultimatum, by the fear of losing Caleb. He brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch achingly tender. You're okay, he said, more to himself than me. You have to be. Back home, I knew I couldn't delay. Mara's deadline loomed, and Caleb's memories were returning, fragments piecing together like a broken mirror. That night, I sat him down in the living room, the fire crackling softly. Caleb, I started, my voice trembling. There's something you need to know. His eyes locked on mine, steady but wary. I took a breath, the weight of the truth crushing me. I'm not exactly who you think. Our marriage started with a lie. I told him everything, Elias's scheme, the fake pregnancy test, the gala. I didn't mention transmigration, it was too much, and I wasn't sure he'd believe me. But I admitted the baby was real, that I loved him, that I was terrified of losing him. Caleb listened, his face unreadable. When I finished, silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. You tricked me, he said finally, his voice low. All this time, it was a game. I shook my head, tears falling. Not now. Not anymore. I love you, Caleb. I didn't mean to, he stood, his hands clenched, and walked out, the door slamming behind him. I sank to the floor, sobbing, the baby kicking as if protesting the pain. Mara found me there, her expression softer than I'd expected. You told him, she said. I nodded, unable to speak. She sighed, sitting beside me. He's hurt, but he loves you. Give him time. I wanted to believe her, but the emptiness in the house felt final. That night, I slept alone, the bed cold without Caleb's warmth. I dreamed of my old life, fleeting and distant, and woke with a start, my hand on my belly. This was my life now, and I had to fight for it. Days passed, and Caleb stayed distant, working late at his office in Syracuse. I tried to keep busy, painting the nursery, cooking meals he didn't eat. Mara helped, her sharp edges softening as she saw my pain. He's remembering, she told me one afternoon. Bits and pieces. It's confusing him. I nodded, my heart heavy. I wanted to fix it, but I didn't know how. Then, one evening, Caleb came home, his face haggard. He stood in the doorway, holding a crumpled photo of one from the gala. I remembered this, he said, his voice rough. And more. The fights. The coldness. I wasn't good to you, was I? I shook my head, tears welling. You had your reasons. He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. I remember the lie, he said. But I also remember you now. The way you laugh, the way you look at me. That's real, isn't it? I nodded, my throat tight. It's real. He reached for me, hesitant, and I stepped into his arms, sobbing against his chest. I'm sorry, I whispered. I'm not him. Not really. But I love you. He held me tighter, his voice breaking. I don't care who you were. I know who you are now. We stood there, the firelight dancing around us, and for the first time, I felt hope. The weeks that followed were fragile but healing. Caleb's memories returned slowly, but he chose to focus on the present in us. We went to therapy, unraveling the tangled threads of Elias's past and our new reality. The baby, a boy we named Liam, arrived on a snowy February night, his cries filling the hospital room with life. Caleb held him, tears in his eyes, and I knew we'd made it through. We moved forward, not as Elias and Caleb from the novel, but as ourselves, building a family on truth and love. Mara became an unexpected ally, her protectiveness turning to warmth. The staff stopped whispering, and Syracuse's elite learned to accept me. The novel's ending rage and betrayal never came. Instead, we wrote our own, one where love wasn't perfect but was real, where a cold alpha and a lost omega found each other, not in a lie, but in a truth stronger than memory. As I watched Caleb rock Liam to sleep one night, the Syracuse skyline glittering through the window, I realized I didn't miss my old life. This was home, not the estate, not the city, but the love we'd fought for. The past was a shadow, but we were the light.